before we start about the topic, which actually probably I think all of you are pretty much accomplished people in your own spaces, in your own industries. You also may be already going through some cloud journey. Broadly speaking, if you look at it, cloud, adopting cloud is like a marriage. You're getting into that phase, everybody's saying it's dangerous, it's risky, but still you want to do it, right? And so that is what is the state is in some cases are. However, we all are doing it. So there are three stages, as you can call it. I think either you are exploring it, you're still evaluating what partner to pick. Second is you have actually signed up, engaged. You said, you know what, you want to take this cloud journey and you want to start a development, but nothing has moved to production yet. And the third could be possibly you've already moved to production and you have applications, at least 50-20% of your applications running in cloud. So before we begin the panel discussion, I would actually want to have a sense check of the audience here and find out who all are in the first stage of discovery, but you've not signed up in the cloud adoption. Just by show of raise of hands, if you can just, you're still evaluating. It's okay, I think it's, most companies are still evaluating, okay, great. Second, you have picked up the partner and you're actually doing the development activities happening, but nothing moved to production yet. Okay. Third is people have moved to production. Any show of hands? Okay, great. That's awesome. Okay. So I think we're going to have a pretty mature discussion because many of you have moved to cloud, which means you know the challenges and how to mitigate them as well. So with that, as far as cloud is concerned, I think we all have different versions around it, and views on it. It has been in the industry for almost, if I may say, 3 to 8 years, like 8 to 9 years, where actually it's been evolving. But at the same time, the adoption rate has not been as fast as we would have hoped. So there are some challenges and the ways to, approaches to solve them. So I'm going to allude to my colleague here and friend here, actually, Anil, who actually is part of Samsung right now, and he takes care of R&D and IT management. So what are the top challenges which actually, organizations are facing, and how are different organizations solving them?
Hello. Yeah. Yes. So as Puneet rightly mentioned that it's been more than 80 years where the cloud journey started, but it has not picked up that level which it should have been. So we see the top challenges. I think most of you agree with it, that data security is one of the primary concerns. Though the cloud has many benefits, but it pulls back when we decide whether we should move to the cloud or not move to cloud. And second, the data privacy. So many regulations are there in the place which all need to be maintained. So data privacy is another factor where we have the problem to move to cloud. And third, nowadays is the resources also. And resources, whether we have adequate resources to manage the cloud services, and also vendor lock-in. If we do not make a right decisions, we may end up in the vendor lock-in, which will puzzle further to get out of it. So these are various main concerns which are pulling us from not moving so smoothly to the cloud. However, we can overcome these challenges if we make a right strategy for that. So for the data security point of view, the first and foremost things that what are we going to protect? What are your company policy and vision that need to be aligned, and you need to find out the right CPS, cloud service provider, CSP, and you should have right processes in place, monitoring in place. So there are three different type of controls. I would just like to briefly touch upon on that. One is the preventive controls. So you should implement your multi-factor authentication, your IDS, IPS, and firewalls that should prevent unwanted or unauthorized access to your cloud. Second, you should have a detective controls, which like SOC you have in place. You have various teams monitoring. Your anti-malware system is there, which is flagging the tickets that something is wrong in the system, that you should take care of that, and that triggers your preventive or corrective controls to take measure to address that issue. And third one comes to your corrective controls. So you should have a robust corrective controls to mitigate, to take out the weakness from the system, and that's a regular process to redefine your security risk which is in your environment to eliminate. It cannot be eliminated 100%, but to be mitigated to large extent that even if it occurs, it doesn't damage to your organizations. So that's all.
Thank you, Anil. So one of the challenge we face is it's not just the data which is in transactional data or or records data, but I think the code itself is a concern, right? When that's more big, but much bigger vulnerability if you actually expose your code base. So Nishant, you actually have been in ZepPay and working on the cloud implementation and DevOps, right? Any ideas on security?
Sure. Thanks, Puneet, for asking that question, and thanks, Quanting, for organizing this session. So I would like to add, like, your cloud security starts as soon as you start your cloud journey. For example, like, if I'm creating any EC2 or VM, I just need to create the right network architecture first. So maybe like I need to create a 3-tier VPC architecture. I need to mention where I would provision my databases. So your databases should get provisioned in a subnet where there is no NAT gateway, where there is no internet gateway. So the idea is your databases should be isolated and your application which is provisioned on an EC2 should only be able to talk to your database. Another security is like, for example, like your EC2 should not be public. I would like to get into a little bit deeper around it. Your lower environment should not be public. For example, like you have different environments, dev, UAT, and production. So your dev, UAT environment should not be exposed to the public. Also, like if you are using a load balancer kind of stuff to route your traffic from the external system to your EC2s and to the databases, then your load balancer should be restricted only to the CDN IPs. Another concern is like, so basically like you should only route the traffic from the whitelisted IPs into your network. Also, your secret should not be checked into any GitHub kind of environment where if your GitHub gets compromised, all your secrets gets compromised and anybody can get an access to your system. All your keys should be rotated. So these are the like various things which we have implemented to take care of the security. Also, there are different scans which you can do. You can go for different certification like SOC 2, ISO 27001, which gives you a like very good implementation or the very good overview, like what are the gaps into your system and how can you mitigate those gaps.
Absolutely, Nishant. I think very well said. These security concerns, I think the intent of this panel is actually not only ask questions, like look at questions we all face, but I think address to the answers, and I think thank you for addressing those. So we have among us actually Alok, who comes from a background of army. So thank you first of all, sir, for your serving in securing the country, and he's a cybersecurity expert as well. So any views on how we bring cloud security?
Thank you, Sudhir. That's a wonderful question that you put. And it's probably relevant to almost everyone who is in the field, who is adopting cloud or considering cloud going ahead for the business requirements. Now, when we talk of security, we are actually talking of managing attack surfaces. Cloud, adoption of cloud, what it does is it enhances your attack surface grossly. And it starts from the endpoint, because now you're working from anywhere, to the cloud infrastructure and to the network that is enabling it. So whenever I have to consider in any environment, when I have to consider security, I actually leave all these attack frameworks and defense frameworks on one side and go back to basics. And back to basics is my experience in the army. An attacker does not start attacking on the day zero. He is doing some preliminary activities, which otherwise people call reconnaissance. So those preliminary activities are also a giveaway. If you have a mechanism in place to actually detect this kind of preliminary activities, you will be able to address attack much before it happens. Come to the next part. When you have the networks which are enabling you in the cloud, people generally tend to oversee the network component and just focus only on cloud security. So once the person comes there, now what this does is it creates a probably interface of network and cloud. Whenever you have interfaces, you will have gaps around or vulnerabilities around interfaces. So next place that one needs to focus is all these interface points. If the interface points are plugged properly, which also includes demarcation of responsibility of security between the cloud service provider and you yourself. What part of ownership of security is available with the CSP and what lies with you? When you define what lies with you, most of the times people who are early adopters think that the cloud provides a reasonable level of security to all infrastructure, to whatever you want to host. Unfortunately, because the business model is such, the security products are something that you have to select based on your business cases. So you have to load your security solution, your solution with these security models which are available in the cloud. Thereafter, when you come, your application security comes the next thing. The application security, especially in today's era where the focus is going towards microservices, you are talking through applications through multiple APIs. Again, the number of interfaces are increasing. You need to again look at these interfaces. No tool, no product is a one-stop solution for all these solutions. You have to address each solution one by one. Having done the cloud security part of it, the next part is what you are actually protecting. You're actually protecting the data and your application. You want to achieve business continuity, for which availability and integrity of your data is very important. So the minute you look at data availability and integrity, you need to have at least 3 things in place. One is the data should be encrypted. Preferably the data should be encrypted while in transit also, not only in rest, while in transit also. And lastly, you should have a mechanism of having an available backup of data from where you could restore your business in case it gets hit by security.
Thank you, Arnav. I think the very important aspect you bring is securing data is important, but at the same time, actually having it available is equally important. And when you talk about availability of data, I think you're talking about resilience. In our data center kind of setup, it's easy to actually say we have our tape backups or other disk backups, but in a cloud setup, we sometimes assume many things that it's already providing us some resilience. However, we do need to take actions to back up the database even on the cloud. So, Vijay, I think you have been involved in this area of resilience, and especially being from railways, I think resilience comes naturally to you in anything you do. Any ideas on that?
Good afternoon. My previous speakers have already told you a lot of technical things about cloud security and all that. Now the comes to how to operationalize it. I come from a background of railway operations. I'm an electrical engineer in railway, so this IT thing is some 10-15 years old. Few things you have to understand now going forward. Cloud is a reality. Whether you want it or whether you oppose it, whatever you do, cloud is a reality. Now or in future, you will have to move to cloud. Maybe it is now hybrid cloud, then multi-cloud, or maybe private cloud hosted on the internet. Internet is also essential for delivery of our services. Ultimately, all this cloud and information security we are doing for running the business. So business is most important. When business is on the internet, it is inevitable that we go to cloud and try to deliver the services there. Next point comes to security and resilience. My personal belief is that privacy in India, in the current state of cyber hygiene what we follow, is completely dead. It is my personal view, not the organizational or governmental view. Second part is that whatever you do today or in future, you will always be few steps behind the attacker. So it is not the question of when you are hacked, it is whether you have been. And I believe that all of us have somebody sitting inside internal threats or external threats which have been exposed. So coming to resilience part, so I focus in the business continuity part of it. You may have a backup on premise that is of no use, because when things go wrong, on-premise backup is of no use. Cloud gives you an opportunity to host your backup outside of your organization. You should use it. Second part is that you should be very careful what you are backing up. I have found in our organization, in many of the organizations, they back up everything, including the transactional data, which has been transacted just yesterday. Most of the time it is of no use. It only increases your cost, your bandwidth, your everything. You should back up those data which can help you come back to business in manual mode or in electronic mode as soon as possible. That only your data managers or your database analysts will know. Third part is that what you are backing up and what time you are backing up is very important. Indiscriminate backup only increases your bandwidth costs and your cloud costs, and it may become so prohibitive. Your management may say, छोड़ो इस सबको सब कुछ अंदर ले आओ, यही backup ठीक है. So if you need to do cloud backup, you should do it very intelligently and keep on optimizing it over a period of time. Thank you.
Absolutely, I think very well said. So that's few points. I think Saurabh, yeah, you can.
So, very valid point. Am I audible? Yeah. Very valid point said. And this is what I am right now doing. See, friends, based on my experience, what is very important is to strategize when we are doing our DR strategy or a backup strategy. We need to put up RTO and RPO very properly. And as our panelists said that, okay, don't put everything over there. That is true. And based on your applications importance, its priority, you have to define the RPOs and RTO. If you are able to define it properly, trust me, you will be able to justify the cost very rationally, and you will be able to have a proper DR or proper backup strategy in place. Yeah, that's all from my side.
All right, I think that's the resilience which we generally assume in cloud actually we need to do something to make it actually effective in an organization. So both very well said on that topic. But one more important thing is actually, do we want to put all our eggs in one basket? Which means that are we going to put all our backups in one cloud, or all our infrastructure and all our applications in one cloud? Or do we have the choice to actually say go multi-cloud? Now, I think most of you have heard that approach, but multi-cloud is multi-hard. Single cloud itself is a challenge, but I think multi-cloud is even multi-hard. But there are ways to solve it. So Nishant, I know you have in ZepPay actually kind of also looking at these approaches, right?
Thanks, Puneet. Yeah, so like we have a multi-cloud architecture, but I would like to mention that do not do it just for the sake of doing it. So the idea is first identify your use case. What is your use case? First identify like whether you need to go into the cloud or not. That is the first question you should ask yourself. So if you have a use case for the cloud, then, or maybe like a multi-cloud, then you try to identify like which cloud you have to use for your services. I just support it with an example. For example, like I have to build a mobile app or a web application in which like maybe I just want to implement 3 features. One is the real-time app sync. Second is the authentication. Third is the machine learning. So for example, like AWS also provides AWS Amplify service to build the web and mobile application. Google Cloud also provides a Firebase kind of a service using which I can build my web and mobile applications. Now the point is, so if I have to choose between these 2 services, between these 2 cloud providers, first thing I would like to say is what is my learning curve. So if I go to AWS Amplify, the learning curve is a bit steeper than Firebase. Second is like, so if I was taking example of a real-time sync. So if I'm building an app which needs to get a location, for example, I'm building a Ola app or a Uber, which needs to get the real-time location of a driver, of a consumer. So both does it for me, right? But if I have to do millions of transactions into that database, so Firebase will cost you a lot, and maybe AWS Amplify is the better use case. If I have to implement authentication, I can use AWS Cognito, but it is the learning curve is there into the using AWS Cognito. But in Firebase, maybe it's straightforward. Another example is like if I have to use some machine learning algorithm. So Amazon also provides you Amazon recognition, Amazon Lex, all those kind of facilities, right? And even the Firebase also provides you ML kit where like you can do a barcode scanning or you can do a face recognition kind of stuff. But the idea is it depends like what is your use case. Do you want a great learning curve? Do you want to, what features do you want to get implemented using these services? Second is the cost factor. So for example, like if I'm building a small application, maybe this service can serve my purpose. So I should go to that cloud. Another use case can be, for example, as I mentioned, like maybe I belong to some government industry where I'm not allowed to put data outside of my network. So maybe I need to go into a private cloud kind of there. Or maybe I need to follow some compliance like GDPR, or I need to govern and compliance my strategy. So the whole idea is like first identify your use case, look at the features, costing, services, because each and every cloud provides you the whole scalability, reliability, 99.99% uptime. So the idea is first look at your features, your requirements, and then you choose what do you want to do.
Absolutely, thank you, Nishant. So moving to cloud is actually essentially, at the end of the day, it's a business improvement, right? We are trying to help the business grow or save costs. But what happens is actually if we go multi-cloud, we may lose the ability to use native services. We may also struggle to actually manage the cost. But there are tools and ways how costs and the governance around multiple clouds can be done. I know, Nitish, you actually have expertise in solution designs for multi-cloud. Anything you want to say?
So yeah, thanks, Puneet. So everybody sitting in the audience as well as the panelists will agree to one point that cloud is a journey, not the destination. And more rightly so said, if you have asked anybody 5 years ago, are you planning to migrate to cloud or adopt cloud technology? I think 70 to 80% must have said, okay, I'm also evaluating one or the other cloud service provider available in the market. But with the advancement of the technologies and realization from the customer side as well, the data suggests that not all the the technology or the data processing is happening in the data center itself. A large chunk of the data for the organizations is generated on the edge. So IDC suggests approximately 75% of the data is generated on the edge, and you require some kind of IT setup in those locations as well to process and make some sense out of that data. So what have we arrived to? So there is a lot of disruption in every space happening in the last 5 years, whether it is automobiles, whether it is data center technologies. What we as an organization believe here that hybrid cloud is something which gives the flexibility and choice to the customer to deploy anything from workload perspective, whether it is the compliance part, whether it is your speed or agility target, whether it is the performance aspect of the applications, whether it is the TCO of the overall running of the data center or the IT part of it. Hybrid fits in, kind of makes happy the entire management to convince basically, because eventually if you start your cloud journey, migrating the entire stack to the cloud obviously will not happen on day one, right? You will probably realize, okay, this is some of the applications which are targeted, probably better suited for the, I can put it on a multi-tenant environment somewhere, but the business critical applications which are latency sensitive, you will primarily try to keep it on premise. So what has this led to is that a new category of services has developed, which is data center DCIaaS, which is data center infra as a service. So what has happened is now for the private and the public cloud to coexist, a lot of the innovation is now happened that why not bring that pay-per-use agility features on premise as well. And a lot of companies, including ourselves, have developed billing solutions around it. So now you can consume any infra on a pay-per-use model, and there is no upfront commitment on that part. So that frees up a lot of resources for any organization to spend that money on the other business activities and development basically. So overall, this market is again touted to have an ARR of approximately, you could say, 14 billion by 2025. So every on-premise vendor is now evaluating DC infra as a service on-premise for various reasons now. So just to cut short, I think now the customer has the power to decide, where, because now everybody has a taste of everything. Like they know the costing part, the compliance part, and what the management requires for them. So they can accordingly take a call, do a judicious, brainstorming within their organization, and take the right bet that what is the best suited model, or do we. It could be on-premise, it could be private cloud, it could be any model what you feel that is best for your organization to excel in the market, basically. So that's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Nitish. So while we are discussing this, I'm sure many of you must be thinking of some questions. Please keep your questions coming. We'll, in the end, 5 to 10 minutes, we will try to bring out and answer any questions which might come from this audience. But I think once we have put our data on the cloud, secured it, had it made it resilient, and at the same time we use multi-cloud or single cloud approach or private cloud approach, the question is, how do we use that data? How do we make sure that the data is actually now being utilized by the organization for the benefit of growing the business? So that data analytics on cloud actually has its own ecosystem. And Deepak, I know you have been working on data analytics as you're a data enthusiast. And any views on how we can best leverage cloud for data technologies?
Thanks, Puneet, for bringing this agenda up in this discussion. Like everyone in the panel has spoken already about that cloud is the universal truth, and we all have to adhere to this, and this is the certain future, right? So once we have made the decision to adopt the cloud and hosted all our ecosystem onto the cloud, then cybersecurity, resilience, and everything has already been talked about. But at the end of all of this, data has been produced in many formats, like structured, semi-structured, and unstructured formats, right? So all that data, could be utilized for the data analytics as well, for the purposes of various strategic managerial decisions to be taken for the growth of the business, you say, right? So first of all, the call is to take a decision to be in a position to accommodate and store all of the data which is being generated as a part of the system. So once we end up getting hold of all the data, maybe in a form of a data lake on some any of the preferred cloud partners. But apart from building a data lake, then it becomes a core responsibility to design the downstream analytical engine in such a shape that it copes up basically with our various reporting requirements, which has been on priority of basis on various factors, right? So the importance of building a centralized data warehouse or application in place is basically speaks a lot about it, right? Because every organization wants to grow up and take that graph exponentially high, right? So for that thing to happen, various decisions has got to be taken. So what I'm trying to say is decision making can be of two types, right? You can take the decisions basis on the gut feel or basis on your prior experiences, right? But these days it does not work out every time, right? So the decisions should be very well supported by the data, right? So data driven decision making can enable the organizations to take their future investments and more strategic planning in a way that every time they want to spend some bit of their investment into something, then it has got to be backed by the data driven decisions. Now because most of the organizations I've seen from my experiences that when you are available on one of the preferred cloud partner, let's suppose we have deployed all our ecosystem onto AWS cloud service provider, but like Nishant has already mentioned that we land up in such a situation that we also find ourselves in such a situation that we tend to go to different cloud service providers as well. But in that case, another challenge comes up. Let's suppose I was on AWS and we were having AWS Redshift to be our a data warehousing service. But one of the application pops up in the system and it is deployed on let's suppose Azure. Then AWS Redshift needs to integrate with Azure data storage. Then another discussion pops up to what is the ideal data warehousing service what we should go for. So we should, we should design our system in such a way that you must have heard about technology Snowflake, right? Which gives you a technology cloud agnostic data warehousing solution on particularly deployed on cloud. So such services should be adopted in the times to come, which gives you, the leverage or the liberty to be more universal and be less dependent on particular cloud service providers.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I think all cloud providers actually provide certain level of data analytics capabilities. Alok, I know you have expertise on the topic as well. Please, if you can share.
No, I decided to pitch in because the discussion veered towards multi-cloud, and come back to the same thing. Multi-cloud means I'm enhancing my attack surfaces that much more for the attacker. So that is the first part. Second, I am also increasing the number of interface points between the different cloud service providers as well as the business user. So I am providing him more places of interface and vulnerabilities. When I come with an attacker mindset, I actually lean on a very large area, large front I lean on. After I lean on, I actually look for where are the gaps that I can go in. And I'm reiterating this attacker mindset because when you are talking of security, you have to know what the other person is thinking, which way he is wanting to exploit. When I lean on a large surface, I look for gaps. Wherever I get a gap, I use certain tools, certain mechanisms to find a headway to establish a foothold. Once I have established a foothold, then I exploit myself. I expand the reach of what I am able to get through privilege escalations, identity accesses, all kind of tricks in the trade that are named in the book are used to get a higher level of access. Post that, I do not want to be caught with my, I do not want to be caught with my hand in the cookie jar. So I would want to exfiltrate. And when I exfiltrate, I do not want the person whom I have attacked or the institution whom I have attacked to have trails of how I managed to do it, so that possibly this gap can be exploited again and again, or maximize the number of exploitation that I can do over it. So on the attack, this is my attacker's mindset. And I also do a last thing, which is post-strike damage assessment. So what I have done, what kind of damage I have inflicted, and what is the payoff that I have got. When I come on the defensive side, the most important part of me is I know that there is no stopping a determined attacker. Anyone who is got behind to attack will attack. What is there in my control is to create deterrence. And this deterrence can be proactive deterrence. And when you create proactive deterrence, you actually are looking at dynamically plugging in these gaps which are emerging at various points in time. Apart from that, you're building in resilience. You're moving to the cloud, you have an application, you have to have some kind of resilience built in, either in terms of production environment, which is hosting on a real-time basis, or people talked of backup recovery, etc. But one more thing which the attacker did not want you to know was have the trail. A very important part of the defense mindset should be to get back the route through which the attacker actually was able to intrude into me, for which you need tools, and there are tools. I am refraining from naming them because of they are vendor-specific tools, where you can do your forensic analysis of establishing how this gap was exploited, thereby ensuring that it does not happen again or the frequency is minimized. So that whenever you decide a cloud strategy, on-prem, cloud, hybrid, multi-cloud, you keep in mind from a security perspective that what is your total attack surface. Thank you.
I think, Alok, security remains the paramount in all our cloud adoption. I think that's for sure. I think that's the first concern, and given the organization's reputational risk, security always is on top of everybody's mind, I'm sure. Saurabh, you want to add something, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. See, I am being into industry and I would say playing with the cloud infrastructure for last 15 years. Coming to analytics side, okay, what experience what I would like to share is from a analytics perspective, earlier we used to load all the workload on our SAP instance during the night time. Okay, we could not do it at the daytime, and that creates a load. Okay, when we moved to cloud and we went with SAP on RISE, Okay, what we started doing, we moved the load of all the data extraction of the analytics we use ClickSense to the DR instance. Okay, so that way we were also able to justify the cost of the cloud, the DR instance, as well as from a resilience perspective. I will come, and this is what we did it, that we are not doing a DR at say 6 months or a 1 year time. Now we keep on switching our infrastructure and run actually the whole business on a quarterly basis. So we declare that right now we are on one instance, and after 3 months we again declare that okay, we switch to the other instance. So everything business as usual runs on 2 instances. Now it is difficult for us to say that okay, which is a production and which is a DR instance. And this is how we can do it only when we are there at cloud. Okay, not every company is able to do it. Okay, maybe BSE or NSE would be able to do, or some banks are able to do, but companies like us, okay, we could able to do it only when cloud is available. So these are certain benefits which we have leveraged out with cloud, friends, and I would say you explore all these things.
Thank you. So I think we'll just take any questions from audience right now, if you have any. There's too much light, I can't see hands if you have any, but please, any questions which anybody in the audience may have. The brownie point for the first question. So I think the food is kicking in your tummy, as an actually, you know, that might be. So any people who have want to share some views on how their adoption has been, I think that's fine as well. Okay, I think.
I just want to add
please.
one thing, that nowadays the cloud usage is prevalent. So like hacking also being offered as a service through cloud. That's also hosted. So cyber hacking, cyber attacks, you can get launched attack through this thing through cloud also. Okay, so it is flourishing. Other, you know, like for villains also, bad people also, the cloud is becoming a tool to exploit more.
Yeah,
I
please.
wanted to add something, that it is good to remain protected as much as possible, but you should realize that if you are not moving to a cloud, what all you are losing. We generally in the government, this type of talk goes on, that putting data outside is going to have a, you know, bahar rakh diya types, as if we are putting it on the road. We have to consider cloud and our on-premise, something like our having our own house, own flat, or a bungalow particularly, and living in a hotel or a gated community. So naturally, in a hotel, you are able to expand as you want. When your analytics load or any kind of load goes up, you can hire more rooms, but you can't do that in your on-premise this thing. So one very important part of moving to cloud is your capability to innovate, or your capability to have new tools, as Jappe is able to do. Something is on this cloud, something is on other cloud, whatever is their strengths. But again, for all multi-cloud or the single cloud, the bottom line remains that you have to protect your critical data in such a way that you are able to restart your business again. Attacks will keep on happening, attacker as a service or whatever will keep on coming, but you have to ensure an architecture of data architecture in the on-premise versus cloud and all that, so that you can restart your business after getting attacked. So that is the key point which I want to emphasize. Keep your data in so many places in such a way that you are able to restart your business. Thank you.
All right. I think with that, we're coming to the close of the session, but at the same time, I think just want to summarize that broadly speaking, cloud adoption is increasing, and I think, especially in India, I would say government is actually trying to make some efforts to make all the cloud providers have data centers here. Kind of those regulations are helping to grow the business. The demand and supply will increase automatically. But at the same time, adoption is dependent on how we find ways to make sure we use the cloud capabilities faster and sooner, but at the same time effectively. Because if we take wrong decisions on the cloud, they're going to cost us far more on the data center wise if you compare it, right? So all those right decisions on security, on its agility and reliability, I think those are important factors, and then how to use the data for the good of business by a good analysis. So with that, thank you all. Thank you I hope we earned the privilege of your time and you learned a few points from our discussion. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you to the audience, please. Thank you.
Thank